Hello everyone, how's it going, and welcome to today's Wild Rift video. In today's guide, we're going to be taking a look at the Enlightened One, Karma. Karma is a very versatile champion that can be played in multiple roles. But wherever she is played on the Rift, she offers a lot of utility with all her shields and crowd control from her abilities. Karma is also one of the biggest lane bullies in the game, with her crazy damage from her first ability, Inner Flame. This damage can help her snowball in the early game and get advantages for her team. Take a look through the build with Karma. We want to focus a lot on ability power items so we can do more damage with our abilities and also offer more shielding with our third ability. Now with this build, this is a lot more focused on support Karma. However, support Karma's build and mid lane Karma build is very similar. Even as a support, we want to go for a more damage carry oriented Karma build rather than the more defensive supportive style, because Karma does so much damage with all of her abilities. First up, for the support item, we have Relic Shield. Relic Shield is just the safest and best option to go for a support item. You can also go for Spectral Sickle or Ancient Coin, kind of depends on your play style, but Relic Shield just really safe and really quick to be able to stack up as well when auto attacking minions. Then we have our boots and our boots upgrade. We want to try and get this as soon as possible. It gives us a movement speed which allows us to roam around the map. We can try and make plays throughout the jungle or even through the mid lane. And also this boots upgrade gives us 55 ability power and 150% mana regeneration, so we can deal more damage and also have that little bit mana regeneration so we can use our abilities more often. Luna's Echo, really great base item for Karma. Her first ability already has AoE damage, but we also have the Disordic Echo passive from Ludens, which allows us to spread damage. And also the stats itself are really great. You know, ability power, magic pen, max mana, ability haste, all really great stats. Then we have Crown of the Shattered Queen. This is more of a defensive item. It still gives you a lot of great base stats, but the big thing is that Safeguard passive, which grants you a spell shield that blocks the next hostile ability. So if you're playing against assassins or any sort of crowd control, this can really protect you against that. And also it's kind of a bit of two items. You know, you got the base stats, which are really good damage stats, but then you have the passive, which is a bit more defensive. You can go for this as the second item, or you can delay this a little bit if you feel like you don't need that passive to try and get a bigger spike with our other two items, which are going to be Rabadon's Death Cap with the insane ability power and also increased percentage ability power throughout the game, and Liandry's Torment for that burn damage. We're going to be spamming our first ability a lot. We're going to be poking a lot, doing a lot of damage, so this item really helps us out. We have two other situational items as well that we can build. We can go for Morellonomicon if we need the Grievous Wounds, if there is a lot of healing on the enemy team, this is really good. Or we can go for Trident if there is a lot of shielding on the enemy team. You can swap these out for Liandry's of Crown the Shattered Queen, kind of depends on the situation of the game. As for the runes, First Strike as the main rune. As I already mentioned, your first ability, Inner Flame, is a great poking tool during the laning phase. You're going to be using this a lot to poke down enemy champions, deal damage, and also get advantages in the laning phase, which is where First Strike also comes in handy, because we're going to be poking, proccing First Strike, dealing that extra bit of true damage, but also getting a little bit of extra gold for ourselves, so we can use this to be able to get our items that little bit sooner. As for the main tree, we're going to go for the domination tree, going for Scorch for getting that extra bonus damage with the Scorch with the poke damage, which works really well with our first ability. Cheap Shot, our empowered first ability, and also our second ability is allowed to impair the movement on enemy champions, and also our ultimate as well, if you can hit them on the outer ring, again can also impair to give us a little bit of true damage. Eyeball Collector, whether you're shielding an ally or dealing damage to enemy champions, when you get takedowns you get a lot of ability power, which scales up very well. And then Transcendence, going for that extra little bit of ability haste so we can use all our abilities more often. I mean, Transcendence with ability haste really works well with using our abilities more often, especially because we need to stack our abilities to be able to use the empowered mantra version, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. And as for the summon spells, we have Flash and Ignite. Ignite, just very aggressive rune because we want to play super aggressive during the laning phase. If you want to play a bit more defensive, you can go for something like Heal or Exhaust instead. But that's everything for the build. Let's head on to the abilities. On Wild Rift, Karma works a little bit differently than what she does on PC League of Legends. Some of her abilities are completely different, and some of her abilities are even swapped around. And that's the case with her passive Mantra. This is normally her ultimate in PC League of Legends, but in Wild Rift, it's actually her passive. So every time Karma casts an ability, she gains a stack of Mantra, and at 3 stacks, she can enter a Mantra state, enhancing her next basic ability, which is either her first ability, her second ability, or her third ability. Now you can tell that you are able to get the stacks of Mantra and how many stacks of Mantra you're on just underneath Karma's health bar. When you use an ability, you gain a stack of Mantra. You can see there's a gray bar there. The second ability will gain the second stack, and the third ability will put you in that Mantra state. You'll realize that you're in a Mantra state when all your basic abilities are starting to glow, and when that little dash underneath the mana bar turns purple. Now this enhances all of her basic abilities, either dealing more damage, getting more crowd control, or getting more shielding, which we'll talk about a little bit later on when we get into each of the abilities. But there's a few little tips that I want you to know with her passive. One big thing is at the start of the game, she's going to start straight away in the Mantra state. So you're going to get a fully stacked passive right at the start of the game. This is extremely powerful if you're going for like a level 1 fight down in the dual lane, or even in the mid lane trying to get a little bit of an advantage, because you can start your first ability, get the empowered in the flame from your first ability, and deal a lot of damage. Also, I want you to get into a state of mind where you're actually, every single time you go to base, whether you die, whether you recall, you want to use your abilities until you get that Mantra state. You want to stack your abilities in base. It doesn't really matter too much about the cooldowns, because Karma has very low cooldowns anyway, so you can just use your abilities in base and whilst you're walking back to lane. And when you walk back to the lane, I want you to make sure that you're in that Mantra state, because having that advantage and getting that empowered ability straight away when you get to the laning phase, whether it's at level 5, level 10, it doesn't matter what point of the game, you always want to make sure that you have your passive fully stacked when you walk out of base. For Karma's first ability, we have her Inner Flame. Now the basic version fires a blast of energy, dealing magic damage to the first enemy hit and surrounding enemies, and slowing them by 35% for 1.5 seconds. This is the basic version and not the Mantra version of the first ability. You can see here that it has quite a bit of range, so you'll be able to poke from quite afar. When you land this ability, it will deal a little bit of splash damage, and you'll be able to deal damage to enemy champions. This is also really good against minions as well, because as it mentions, it can deal a little bit of damage to surrounding enemies as well. Now this area is not that big, but you'll be able to do this to push the lane, or even you can try and hit minions and use that surrounding damage to hit champions at the same time, which can give you a pretty big advantage during the lane phase. But this is your big snowball ability that you'll be able to poke during laning phase and deal a lot of damage. Now the Mantra version increases the destructive power of the blast, dealing more magic damage to the first target hit and surrounding enemies, and the blast also leaves a field for 1.5 seconds, which slows enemy champions, and it also explodes, dealing more magic damage. And this is such a huge ability to start off with at level 1 and even any point of the game. And this is one of the main reasons why you want to make sure that you have your passive fully stacked when you walk out of base, because walking into a lane and just using this ability straight away on an enemy champion honestly will do about a quarter or even a half of their health straight away, especially because of the build that we're going with full damage. So your empowered version has the same amount of range. You can see here when you hit a champion, it will explode, they'll be slowed, and they also pretty much deals double the amount of damage with the empowered version, which is so huge. So you'll be able to use this quite a lot to be able to poke during laning phase, or even use this on multiple enemy champions. Even if you miss this ability, the great thing about it is if I aim it in the middle of these 3 enemy champions, even if I hit this, you can see all 3 enemy champions are still going to be here. And that's the big difference between the Mantra version and the normal version of the first ability, because the normal version of your first ability, when you use it and if you miss, it's not going to leave anything behind. The ability is just going to fade and you're just going to miss completely, and it's pretty much going to be a waste of ability. But the Mantra version, even if you miss, it's still going to leave that big massive field on the floor, which is going to slow enemy champions and also deal more damage. So it's super important to make sure that you use your first ability as much as possible to deal the most amount of damage. Karma's second ability is Focused Resolve, which Karma tethers up to 2 nearby enemy champions, dealing magic damage and revealing them for 1.75 seconds. The big thing is you are going to reveal enemy champions, so Karma works especially well against champions that can turn invisible. So like Akali, for example, when she goes into her second ability Shroud, Karma can use her second ability when she gets revealed, and even if she goes back into the Shroud, she'll be revealed the whole time. So a big massive counter Karma happens to be against Akali. And if the target fails to break the tether, they take magic damage, and also they are rooted for 1.75 seconds. Now it does say if the target fails to break the tether, so if the target walks away from the tether, you're going to deal extra damage. However, you can actually walk away from the tether yourself because there is a limited amount of range. When you use your second ability, as I mentioned, you can target up to 2 champions, so you can use these 2 here as an example. You can tell that you're in range of your second ability by this gray circle around you. When you walk out of range with your second ability, you can see here the circle is gone. When you walk in range with your second ability, I just go within the range, you can see that the circle does come up and the enemy champion is targeted. That means if I use my second ability, I can then tether 2 nearby enemy champions. You can see that the range is quite big, and we can use this on quite a few champions. You'll see that there's a new circle that forms once the second ability is used, and that second circle, the green circle around the target, this will give you an indicator of when you can walk away and when you can't really walk away, because if you walk out of range of that green circle, you're going to lose out completely. So if I use my second ability here, and if I walk out of range, you can see the target doesn't get rooted and we completely miss out. But if we stay in range of our second ability, you can see that they're going to get rooted again and again and again. And this is really, really big because you need to make sure that you stay within range to actually land the root on your second ability. Because landing the root on your second ability means that you can follow up with your first ability or even with your ultimate. Now, the empowered version or the mantra version of the second ability really allows this ability to come online. It's a bit different to how it works on PC League of Legends. So a new tether will be formed between tethered targets. So you'll be able to get another tether, and the tether is basically the string or the line, whatever you want to call it. And if there's only one tethered target, the new tether will spread towards an additional enemy champion instead, which is really, really big. And if the targets fail to break all the tethers, they'll deal, again, more magic damage and will be rooted for an improved 2.25 seconds instead of 1.75 seconds. So if you do the same scenarios what I just did, where there's one enemy champion here and I'm just tethering that one enemy champion, that tether is actually going to spread to another enemy champion just behind them. This is really huge for when you're playing support in the dual lane, because you'll be able to tether both the support and the AD carry. So say for example, I have the support champion is the dummy here and the AD carry is the champion behind it. Even if the support is flashing away back towards their tower, that extra tether that you have between the AD carry and the support is huge, because I can walk out of range of my second ability here, right? You know, I mentioned about the basic version is that you can walk outside of the green circle and then you're not going to be able to tether. That's completely different with the empowered version or the mantra version, because even if I walk out of range, that tether that is in between the 2 enemy champions is still going to proc and still going to root them, the enemy champions. So this is such a huge way that you can use this in team fights. You can use this in the dual lane to not only root 1 champion but root 2 champions for pretty much double the amount of time. So it's a really, really huge ability. However, it can be wasted if you don't have any other nearby enemy champions. I think that's a really, really big thing, is that you need to make sure that you have 2 or more nearby enemy champions when you want to use the empowered version of your second ability, because this is a really good catch potential, but also it could lose you out on damage because you can't get your empowered version of your first ability or even your third ability to be able to shield enemy champions. Onto the third ability, we have Inspire, which Karma grants an allied champion a shield for 3 seconds and also gives them movement speed for just over 1 second. Now, even though this says grants an allied champion, you would normally think that this would only work if you shield an allied champion. However, you can actually use this ability on yourself, and most of the time, especially during the laning phase, you want to use this ability on yourself. And it kind of works the same when you're playing champions like Janna, or you're playing champions like Lulu. In the lane phase, most of the time it's actually more beneficial to shield yourself so you can walk up and deal that little bit of extra damage. So you can shield yourself, which is quite nice because it gives you a shield to allow you to walk up to use your second ability or even your first ability to deal damage. But you can also shield allied champions as well, which again will give them the shield and give them that bit of extra movement speed. Now, the mantra version of the third ability, Karma focuses her power, granting a bigger shield that decays over time, and it gives you more movement speed that decays over time. An additional ring will be generated around the shielded target, and the first ally who enters that ring will be granted the same shield and movement speed. So you can use this shield on two allied champions at the same time. You'll see the instance here. So if I use this third ability on this dummy here, that will actually spread onto the other allied dummy right next to it. And you can also use this on yourself as well. So the big thing here is that it says an additional ring is generated around the shielded target and the first ally who enters the ring. So you can actually use the empowered third ability on yourself, and then you can walk towards an allied champion, and then walking towards the allied champion will give them that additional shielding. So say for example you're behind your front line and you want to give your front line a bit more movement speed, you can use the empowered version of your third ability. A new ring forms, you walk into range, and there you go. That allied champion will also get that ring, and the duration is actually dependent on when you actually walk into that the allied champion. And lastly, we have Karma's ultimate, which is a new spell completely, Transcendence Embrace. This ultimate is so much better than what it is on PC League of Legends. I cannot stress this enough. The huge thing about her ultimate is that she's immediately going to enter mantra state. As soon as she uses her ultimate, you are going to be able to get her passive up straight away. Her passive is going to fully stack. Doesn't matter if you have 0 stacks, 1 stacks, 2 stacks, or even 3 stacks. She's going to get that instant mantra state. So as soon as you use your ultimate, you can use an empowered ability straight after that, which is so incredibly powerful on Karma. But her ultimate itself forms a ring of spirit energy in a target location. After 1 second, it detonates, dealing magic damage to all enemies inside the circle, slowing them. And if enemies are hit on the outer ring, then they'll be knocked towards the center. So aiming this ability is actually quite important, because even if enemy champions run away from that inner circle, they're still going to be brought back in. So you want to make sure that you try and use this ultimate in the middle of where enemy champions are. You can see the radius here. You can see how big it is as well. Like, this ultimate covers the whole mid lane. It's really, really huge, and it's so impactful as well. So you can see you have the inner ring and you have the outer ring. So for example, you can see here that if I use the ultimate on this target dummy here on the right hand side, these two other target dummies, the one here and the one up here, they're going to be brought towards this target dummy here. So we use the ultimate and boom, and then you can see the 2 enemy target dummies are going to be brought together, or the 3 enemy target dummies are all going to be brought together. And you can see that now my passive is up and available. This is extremely powerful for a really, really good combo where you can use your ultimate and then use your first ability afterwards. Because you're bringing everyone together with your ultimate, your first ability is going to do huge AoE damage and also slow all of them at the same time, make it very difficult for them to escape. Now, there are many different ways that you can use Karma's abilities to either go forward or to go backwards. You know, your first ability can peel and also deal damage. Your second ability, again, can be used for peel or to chase enemy champions. Your third ability can be used defensively or offensively. So even though I'm going to show you a few combos and few of the best combos that you can deal, these are mainly based on dealing the most amount of damage in a short amount of time. But there many different ways in which you can use Karma's abilities and also her ultimate to make sure that you get that extra empowered and mantra ability. But first things first, we want to make sure, as always, as I said, get this in your head, make sure that you walk to the lane with your passive up and available with that mantra stay. This is going to allow you to basically use 2 mantra abilities in a short amount of time when comboed with your ultimate. Now, the first one that I'd like to do is actually starting off with your second ability. So what you can do is you can start off with your second ability, which is going to give you that double tether, as I mentioned in the ability section. So you're going to use your second ability, and when your second ability roots, that will easily allow you to land your ultimate. So you use your second ability, you get that insane tether, use it with your ultimate, and then use your first ability straight afterwards. This is going to give you an incredible amount of damage and crowd control in a short amount of time. The empowered second ability allows you to tether the enemy champion, but also the enemy champions nearby. Your ultimate is going to bring them all together, and your first ability is going to do that huge amount of AoE damage. But you can also use this in a different way as well. There are some other ways in which you can use this and get this into a better state. I'm just going to quickly remove the dummies and space them out a little bit, because this is the best way. Again, we want to make sure that we use our abilities to make sure that we are in the mantra state, and this is why I said at the start that you need to make sure you have mantra state at the start of every single fight. So you need to make sure that you stack it in base before you're able to join a team fight. Now, this version is a little bit more riskier because you're not going to have a lot of lockdown straight away, but it's probably one of the best ways in which you can do it. So when you come out of the base, you can use your first ability, your empowered first ability first. And then with your empowered first ability, I'm actually going to take this off 0 cooldown. So you can use your empowered first ability, which is going to slow enemy champions, which is going to allow you to easily use your second ability. And then when they're stunned, you use your ultimate. And then when that ultimate comes back up, you have your first ability straight away. So that's a way in which you can deal the most amount of damage in a short amount of time. That's probably the best single target amount of damage that you can deal. I'll quickly show you again, because there's a lot happening in a short amount of time. Again, we're going to use get our passive state. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that this is focusing on one champion. If you can catch one champion out with your first ability, it's really huge. Now, by the time that we use our empowered first ability and we use the full combo with our second ability, our third ability to get a move speed, and then the ultimate, by the time the ultimate is finished and pulls everyone back together, our first ability is going to be up again. So you can use 2 mantra first abilities in a matter of a few seconds. So I'll do it again just to show you. So first ability for the slow, second ability for the root. We can use our third ability as well. And when we root, when we knock everyone together, we can use our first ability again. You probably have to lay your ultimate a little bit more than what I just did, because you can see that everyone's brought together, but I still had about 1 second left on the first ability. But being able to get that extra passive off with your ultimate just makes Karma's playstyle and Karma's playmaking potential through the roof. Like, it's absolutely crazy. Take a look through the leveling order now with Karma. At level 1, most of the time you want to go for your first ability, especially because you have your passive always fully stacked at level 1. This is extremely important to be able to deal a little bit of poke damage early game and get advantages at level 1. However, if you're playing as a support, you can also go for your second ability at level 1 to try and stun enemy champions. I wouldn't really do this most of the time. I'd only do it with an aggressive AD carry, someone like Draven or Lucian that can deal a lot of burst damage in a short amount of time. But most of the time at level 1, you want to go for your first ability. Then level 2, you can either choose between your third ability or your second ability. If you want to play more aggressive, you can go for your second ability, or if you want to play more passive and get more shielding and movement speed and more protection, you can go for your third ability. And then at level 3, we want to make sure that we have all abilities available to us, upgrading our second ability. Then we want to make sure we max our first ability first. And the big reason we max our first ability first is that what I've always said throughout this whole video is your first ability is probably about 50% of your main damage. So you want to make sure that you max this first to deal the most amount of damage possible. Then you want to actually upgrade your third ability so you have more shielding available with your third ability. And then you want to upgrade your second ability. Obviously making sure that you upgrade your ultimate when possible. Now, the big thing about upgrading your second ability is that it doesn't really do too much. You know, the cost, the base damage, the root duration can be pretty good, but your third ability is huge. You know, the cooldown going down and that huge massive base shield will mean a lot during fights. You can go for the second ability if you want to, but the big thing is the cooldown doesn't go down, and normally when you're focusing on leveling up abilities, you want to kind of focus on the cooldowns. But the root duration goes from 1 second to 1.75 seconds, which is pretty decent. You know, the base damage goes up, the enhanced damage and the enhanced root duration goes up. But I think the cooldown available on your second ability is going to be a lot bigger. But you can go for either one of the two. If you want to max your second ability second and play more aggressive, you feel a bit more confident and you don't think you need the shielding, you can go for your second ability leveled up second. Or if you want to go for your third ability, you can go for your third ability if you want to. But that's everything to do with Karma and her abilities and combos and everything. Now we're going to take you all through a gameplay now. I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about Karma in the game. So early game, mid game, late game, fights, combos, everything you need to know. So I'll see you in just a few seconds. All right, here we go into the gameplay with Karma. As I mentioned, we're focusing a lot more on support Karma in this video, but I'll talk a little bit about, you know, mid lane Karma as well and how you can play mid lane Karma, because, you know, her abilities and, you know, the amount of playmaking potential that you can get with Karma is so huge. So you can see here, what you can do is at level 1 is that you can actually use this kind of bush to your advantage. I unfortunately kind of wasted my mantra version of my first ability at level 1. Again, you do have to be a little bit careful, and this is going to, you know, mean that I'm not going to be able to get that mantra first ability until a little bit later on. So you can see that I'm just using my abilities to try and poke down as much as possible. You do need to be a little bit careful with your abilities, you know, early on before you get your boots, because you're not going to be able to use your abilities as much. You can see here that I also took a little bit of poke damage as well. So honestly, this laning phase has not gone too great so far, but that's completely fine. That's kind of the hit and miss of what you do with Karma, especially with the sort of build that we're doing with Karma as well. You just go for full glass cannon Karma, is try and do as much damage as possible. You can see here I got my mantra version of my first ability. I was also able to get off my ignite, and that secures the first of blood for us. So again, if enemies walk even close to Karma when she has her passive up and available, empowered first ability into a few auto attacks, you use your third ability on yourself, so you proc first strike, you're able to deal a bunch of damage. You can see here again, this Morgana puts this pull down. I can just use my third ability. Like, it doesn't matter at all. I just use my third ability and I'm going to easily be able to get the extra damage off and win the fight straight away. And what you're seeing here is I'm going to use my abilities in base. I use my first ability and my third ability in base. And you'll see me use my third ability again soon to get the movement speed. And that will give me my passive. This is exactly what I was saying about Karma when talking about her during the abilities and also the combo section. Is you want to make sure you have your passive up as soon as you come to base. And having this passive up and available means that you can play aggressive from the get-go. You want to play aggressive with Karma. You want to be super aggressive. You want to push forward. You want to poke enemy champions. If you just sit back and just shield with Karma, you're not going to win with her. You need to play aggressive and you need to snowball the early game, because snowball in the early game means that you'll be able to, you know, win later on. You can see here that I'm also again trying to use my first ability to my advantage, poking out Morgana to basically 1 HP there. And having Draven in lane is also really good. You know, Karma works very well with dual lane carries that want to be, you know, super aggressive. We see Master Yi on the ward here. I'm just going to walk up. I'm going to poke him. Honestly, I feel really confident that we can win a 2 versus 2, but Ashe walks up. I mean, Ashe makes a little bit of a mistake walking up, probably seeing that the Yi was there. Maybe thought Yi would come for a gank, but I used my movement speed with my third ability, and I was able to use my second ability Tether and then catch out the Ashe. Obviously, she had no flash as well because she used that earlier on when she died. And yeah, we was able to pick up a second kill. And all we need really is this advantage. You know, we got 2 kills. All we really need is these 2 kills to get an advantage. You can see here I'm pinging on my way against the Master Yi, but I think my Draven wants to go back to base and doesn't really want to risk trying to go for the Master Yi. But Master Yi's sitting bot lane, but doing pretty much nothing with it. As soon as you get your boots, you can pretty much just spam your abilities as much as possible. Like, it doesn't really matter at this point because you have the 150% mana regeneration. You already have a lot of ability power as well. You can just keep spamming your abilities over and over again. You can see again from base, I'm using my abilities to make sure I have my mantra version on my next ability. And I'm going to try and use my first ability, probably again, to try and poke down the enemy champions. But yeah, this Draven is playing really well. You can see here, I use my first ability on Ashe to stun her. I'm using my shield to get the movement speed to try and land the tether. Unfortunately, Ashe did have the flashback up. But again, when you walk up or when you play aggressive with Karma, you're always going to force a summon spell, whether that's Ignite, whether that's Flash, whether that's anything else. You can see here, like, look at the amount of damage that I'm just dealing with just playing Karma like I'm playing her right now. I think I might even use my ultimate here. Yeah, I'm using my ultimate. I'm trying to catch out the Ashe here at the back line. Ultimate gets used by Draven, and there we go. That's another kill, and that's the double kill. And this is just... this champion is just absolutely disgusting. Look how I was able to use my abilities there to just walk up, shield myself, use that second ability to root, you know, Karma. I was able to use the ultimate to do a little bit more damage and try and zone away the Ashe. Use my first ability to poke as well. It's just absolutely disgusting. And there we go. Look, that's all we needed. We needed 4 minutes into this game to pretty much snowball this game. And then we can just run away with this game, basically. Like, we're at a point in this game now we can easily beat the Ashe Morgana duo. And honestly, there's probably a point where Master Yi might come down here. Yeah, like now. And this Master Yi will probably die as well, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, I flashed a little bit too late. I think Draven gets the Master Yi in the end. Okay, we both die for it, but Master Yi dies anyway. I probably could have flashed earlier, to be honest with you, in that point. I tried to root the Master Yi. I just didn't think he would kind of kill me there. I tried to root the Master Yi, and then hopefully I thought with my root I'll be able to survive and also kill the Master Yi at the same time, but unfortunately it didn't pay off. I kind of wasted my flash, and I didn't use my shield as well, which is a little bit unfortunate. What you can do as a support as well is you can roam towards, you can see here I'm roaming towards the Rift Herald, trying to get this Rift Herald starting off. I always say to people, you know, getting the Rift Herald to start off the game is so much more important than getting the dragon, because dragons, your first dragon is not going to give you any stats at all. The extra gold that you get from Rift Herald is a lot more huge. So you can see here I'm using my abilities to zone away the Master Yi, making sure that the Master Yi can't walk up, can't get the objective. And then this also allows us to go down to the bot lane as well. Master Yi, because he was at the Rift Herald, he wasn't able to get the dragon. So I try and steal it here, which unfortunately I don't. I'm able to use the shieldings, use the second ability to keep Draven alive, and it gives us another 2 kills over to the Draven. Unfortunately, we weren't able to steal away the dragon. We probably could have if Rengar was maybe used his ultimate, maybe it was a little bit quicker. He could have jumped in and I could have saved him as well. But still, you know, we dealt enough damage. We got a few kills, and honestly, it's a positive trade. Like, some people will probably look at this and be like, was that really a positive trade? You lost the dragon. We got the Rift Herald. I mean, to be honest, even if we got the Rift Herald and they took the dragon and we didn't get any kills, it's still a positive trade. But since we got the, you know, 2 extra kills as well, it's beyond a positive trade. Unfortunately, Kayle did take the Herald, and Kayle's not using the Herald at all at the moment in the Baron lane. When you take Rift Herald, you want to use it as soon as possible, because you can see in like 20 seconds, or in 10 seconds, sorry, the towers are going to lose their playthings. Kayle used the Rift Herald now, but I think it's too late. Like, it probably... does it get the charge off in time? I'm not too sure. I don't think it did. I think the towers fell. Actually, no, I don't think... oh no, the Rift Herald was still out there actually attacking the minions. So actually, this was probably an even trade in the end, because Kayle took the Rift Herald, didn't even use it before the 7.5 minutes to take the extra tower platings for herself, and also didn't even get the charge off in the end. You can see there's no damage to this Baron lane tower at all. So actually, it was probably a lost trade for us, because we didn't use the Rift Herald at all. So, like, people don't understand how to use the Rift Herald, which is kind of annoying. But whilst that was happening, we made a play in the mid lane. We got a few kills in the mid lane, which was really, really nice. You see I'm going for boots upgrade. I'm just going for Meteor because I just want as much damage as possible. Again, use my abilities out of base, making sure that I have my passive up. But yeah, Kayle basically wasted the Rift Herald there. Like, completely wasted the Rift Herald, which is kind of sad. Because the Rift Herald, we actually could have done a lot with the Rift Herald and got another tower. I mean, the big thing is that me and Draven got a big enough of a lead in bot lane that we were able to get first tower of the game in bot lane, which is normally what you want to do with Rift Herald. But it doesn't really matter anyway. Draven gets another kill. Godlike for the Draven now. Such a huge advantage that we were able to get in the bot lane now, which basically means that this Draven is so fed. Rengar got a kill, but unfortunately died for it, which is okay. Kayle was able to get the Baron lane tower in the end. I mean, even though Rift Herald was completely wasted, we're still so far ahead of this game that it doesn't really matter at this point, you know. Doesn't really matter at this point whether we use Rift Herald for a tower or we didn't. But the best way in which this scenario could have happened is we could have used the Rift Herald to be able to get a few extra kills. I don't know why I played this aggressive, by the way. I played so aggressive in this, but it somehow worked out. I have no idea how that worked out, but it did work out in the end. Played super aggressive. As soon as Master Yi jumped in, I was like, okay, ultimate, push them towards me, use my first ability, and there. I think I actually wasted a bit of damage though, unfortunately. I think I used my ultimate when I had my passive fully stacked. But that's okay. It's still fine. Like, we're still able to get a few more kills there. I just flash forward, use my second ability, get a bunch of damage. Not too sure what happened there. I think my my PC just had a bug there for a second. Not too sure what that was, but we're back. We're good. We're all good. We have Ludens finished. We're going towards Crown Guard now, and this is probably a point of the game where a lot of people kind of struggle to know what to do. I would always say at this point in the game, when you're playing dual lane, just like stay in the mid lane. Your Baron lane and your mid lane should really be taking the side towers at this point. You should be in the mid lane. You as a support and the dual lane should really be in mid lane here to try and get advantage, because the biggest thing in Wild Rift is trying to get mid lane priority. Mid lane priority means that you can roam around the map so much quicker than if you were able to get, like, you know, bot lane priority or something like that. You know, it's really, really huge. You can see here I tried to get a few picks off and a few catches, wasn't able to, unfortunately. We're just going to use this advantage to just roam around, take the towers, take the jungle camps as well. We can just deny away the jungle camps, and also the second dragon spawning. So you can see here that even though we lost the first dragon, we're so far ahead anyway that we can take the second dragon. And to be honest, dragons are only good if you draft it, if you get the dragon soul. And even then, the dragon souls are not really that good. Like, it's not even a win condition at the moment to be able to get a dragon soul. So yeah, it's a lot better to get Rift Heralds at the moment. Dragons are basically non-existent. Yeah. This is pretty much the game, I guess, at this point. We're just, you know, using this mid lane to get pushing power. I've crowned the Shattered Queen completed now as well. Kayle still doing Kayle things in the Baron lane. We have 20 seconds until Baron spawns. We could probably set up around Baron at this point. Yeah, you can see I'm pinging on my way ping towards the Baron. I'm going to try and get vision priority at the top side of the objectives. And this is another big thing as well. Look at my damage that I do to Jhin, by the way. He just gave up as soon as he saw me. My damage is disgusting. This is the crazy thing about playing Karma as a full damage source, is you can be a carry as a support. Like, people probably saying like, oh, you're a support, you can't really carry. Hey, look at this game, for example. I'm a huge carry in this game, and I do a lot of damage. But big thing is, when you're playing towards this mid lane and when you're getting this mid lane priority, you want to make sure that you focus on one side of the map in terms of getting vision, whether that's the bot lane, whether that's the mid lane. Look at my damage again onto Ashe. Like, my champion is so disgusting, it's unreal. But yeah, a little bit earlier you saw us push through the mid lane. When we pushed through the mid lane, we then went towards this bot side jungle because we knew dragon was spawning in 20 seconds. So we pushed through the mid lane, we then went towards the bot side, we took away the jungle camps, and then we moved towards dragon. This time around, we pushed out the mid lane, we pushed it up, and then we went towards the Baron side of the jungle. And the reason is that we want to put a few wards. We want to get vision in the Baron side jungle because Baron buff is spawning. So it's all around playing, it's all about playing around these objectives when you're ahead, getting vision in the enemy jungle. Because, for example, me warding my jungle is going to be useless at this point of the game. There's no way an enemy champion is going to be able to walk up past this river. You basically got a line now across the map where this river is. Anything above this line towards the enemy base, you want to get vision of. Because if you're able to get vision around these, around the enemy jungle, then you could use the advantage of what I did to the Ashe, for example. Use the advantage of, hey, I got vision. I'm going to use that vision to my advantage and do a lot of damage. You can see here, I'm using my first ability, my powered ultimate. And then, yeah, we get our mantra version back up again. I mean, this game's just pretty much over, isn't it? I mean, at this point, it's pretty much a stomp at this point. But I've learned a few things about Karma and how we can use Karma to your advantage during the laning phase. Because as I said, you know, you can be a huge carry for your team when you're playing Karma, you know, in terms of damage, crowd control. Again, the shielding is not that powerful, but you can still use the shielding mainly for the movement speed to your advantage, whether you're shielding yourself or whether you're shielding allied champions. But overall, really nice game.
We only died the one time to that Master Yi gank, which was a little bit unfortunate. But yeah, overall, really, really nice game. MVP as well. Of course, I got the MVP. 7, 1, and 11 in the end on the support role. 17,000 damage. The only champion that did more damage than me was Draven, and that's because me and Draven were just so dominant during the laning phase. But few things to take away is, like I said, you want to play aggressive during the laning phase, you want to use your abilities to your advantage, and you want to try and snowball. When playing Karma from behind, it is a little bit difficult, but when you're snowballing with Karma, it works out a little bit better. But build wise, you just go for full damage, you play aggressive, you try and snowball, and you kind of go from there. But hopefully you enjoyed this guide anyway for Karma. Hopefully I'll be able to do these videos a lot more often. Next up is Kassadin. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all in the next wild video. Peace.